Hey guys, what's up? MadSeason here, back with another video in my memory series for you, where I share my personal story of playing World of Warcraft way back in the day. I bet you didn't expect to see a non-BFA video here, huh? This one is the winner of the September poll, and in the last episode, we talked mostly about the Ahn'Qiraj lair and the Blackwing lair, and all the shenanigans that went on with that. We have just 2 more big raids for vanilla though, and that's of course AQ40 and Naxxramas. Before we get into those though, I wanted to talk about Zul'Gurub first, since I kind of forgot about that in the last episode, as some of you mentioned. And I don't know how, because I did spend a lot of time in there. This was when I was in the deepest with the game, I think. Our Tuesday raid nights would be Ahn'Qiraj, the Molten Core, and then most of the Blackwing lair, and then after that, we also had a ZG group for anyone who wanted to go, so you're talking hours and hours of raiding here. The raid itself was quite new for me at the time. I did all of the 5-man dungeons, and of course the 40-man raids, so having this in between was pretty unique, I thought. And it was quite difficult during its release, as I remember. The Witch Doctor in particular was rough, and I have his voice lines permanently etched into my memory.
Welcome to the great shore, friend. Step right up to die.
These runs would often go into the early hours of the morning, just wiping to the same boss over and over. And it was all for like 2 pieces of gear per boss. That's the thing with vanilla loot, is that you had 20 or 40 people for these raids, and maybe like 3 items dropped. Which, as you would imagine, created tons of drama since there was so little to go around.
I got a crit heal coming for you.
I remember we had a longtime paladin in our guild throw a fit over a ring in here. He was a healer, and he wanted a ring with hit on it, and when they told him that healers can't miss, he got really angry, left the raid, G-quit, the whole 9 yards. He also thought that Pizza Hut was a local chain and was too fancy to deliver, but that's another story. So, I do miss a lot of things from vanilla, but the loot drama isn't one of them, and I much prefer the personal loot system that they have in the current game, where you don't have to roll or master loot stuff. Anyways, ZG, the first 20-man raid I want to say, not counting the original Skolemans in Stratholme I think. We did pretty good in it. I also want to say that we might have been the first Alliance guild on the server to clear through it all. Probably because we were the only ones willing to play for 12 hours a day, but hey, it was still an accomplishment. And pretty fun too, since I was still with my old buddies from my previous guild that I mentioned in my other videos, and that's Zarg, Maver, and Liquid. At this point, we did everything together. All the dungeons, all the raids, so even though I kind of look back in awe and face-palming that we played so much, it made for some good memories finally clearing through it in the wee hours of the morning. It's actually one of my favorite raids in vanilla for that reason, and I hated that it got taken out with that Cataclysm remake. But anyways, on to the main event, which was of course Ahn'Qiraj. To kick off this raid, we of course had the AQ40 opening event, which I've talked about 1,000 times already, so I won't go too in depth here. To sum it up, the entire server had to gather resources in the war effort to open the gates. Once both the Horde and Alliance contributed enough, the gates flew open, and a huge event started where the inhabitants of AQ would invade Azeroth, and it was only then that you could zone into the raids. There were hundreds, perhaps thousands of people outside of the gates, and the server crashed many times. I mentioned in my Scepter of the Shifting Sands videos that I started that huge quest chain, but I didn't make it very far. I think I got to the bug part grind and called it quits there. I think it was really the first time that they did a big event like this. something that would be repeated many times later on for other raids such as Next Ramus and even expansions. Very successful, I think, even with the technical problems. The raid was a whole other beast from what we've seen so far though, and it's where the game really started getting tough. It was the biggest yet in terms of size, not really confusing to navigate since you really only had one path through, aside from a few optional bosses, but it was just very long and time consuming. The worst part of wiping to this place was the run back. It was horrible. You died, you had to run in ghost form back to the entrance, and then go all the way through the beginning to whatever boss that you wiped to. There were no checkpoints like how we have now, so it just got progressively worse the further that you got into it. And to make matters worse, the bosses of course got harder the further you made it, so you'd be spending maybe like 20% of the night in actual combat, and the rest was just going over strategies, buffing, and running back. And to top it all off, the trash in this place was insane. Not just the amount, but their difficulty as well. Particularly the giants between Huhuran and the Twin Emperors. There were like 7 patrolling the hallway, and it was common to wipe on them, and they'd respawn pretty quickly. There were some nights where we just fight this trash for 2 hours because we didn't clear it fast enough due to wiping, so by the time we were fighting the last one, the first one would respawn. So even trash was a huge obstacle sometimes, combined with those runs back. Blizzard did try to help with this though, by making some unique mounts that only drop in the raid. These would have 100% speed no matter what, because remember, 100% speed training was really expensive and not everyone had it, especially if you're spending all your gold on repair bills trying to clear through this place. They dropped in various colors and some were more rare, but they all gave the same movement speed increase. Even still though, there was some drama to be had. And that's because one in particular was super rare, and that was the red one. The way my guild handled it was the officers would get priority on the red ones, which started a raging storm of angst. There are 3 sides to it. First is, the officers work hard to form the raids and handle everything, so they deserve to get them out first. And 2 is, it's unfair to have preferential treatment like that, so it should be divvied up between everyone. And you also have the hidden third side, which I was a part of, and that's who cares, it's just a different color. But regardless, sides A and B would clash about this and be all pissed off, while Group C just got the popcorn and laughed at the whole situation. There was a G quit over it as I remember. We had a druid who was with us since the Molten Core, and he quit after a big argument, and he also took a friend or 2 with him, which caused even more drama. In fact, there's even an achievement for getting this red one today, and it's called Why? Because It's Red. I'm not sure if I'm missing a pop culture reference here or something, but because of the way that my guild handled it, I always thought that this was referring to officers taking the red one, and all the drama that went along with it. Why? Well, because it's red, of course. That's one of the things I'm wondering if we'll see again with the classic servers. With the old loot system, will you see all of this drama return? Or since the game has been out for so long, do you think people will just be like, whatever. Remember, it's gonna be 40 people going against each other for like 4 pieces per boss, so it'll be interesting to see, I think.
Con, what are you doing?
What the fuck? Oh my god!
What the fuck?
Oh my god.
As for the actual bosses in the raid, like I said, very difficult. We were consistently in the top 3 guilds on our server at the time, and we never even managed to beat Cthulhu. Basically, everything was hard, but the last 3 were the guild breakers for this raid, and that was Princess Huhuran, the Twin Emperors, and of course Cthulhu. Huhuran was difficult because it was this raid's resist fight. Every member, not just the tanks, needed to have a ton of nature resist for her, which took a while to farm. Some of it was crafted, some of it dropped from dungeons or other raids, and coordinating 40 people and making sure that they're farming as much as they can was no easy feat. I remember having to farm Razorfen Downs, I think, which was a level 40 dungeon for bracers, I'm pretty sure, because they had nature resist on them. And I remember it took me hours and days of farming to finally get a good pair because they dropped with random stats too. I think I said screw it, and I settled for a stamina and intellect one, which isn't the best for a rogue, but whatever. At that point, I just wanted to get out of that place. So, when we weren't raiding, we were usually farming nature resist gear. Our alchemists would farm all day to make nature absorb potions, so each attempt we were just throwing gold down the drain. And we all hit like wet noodles since you usually had to sacrifice your main stat for that resist. So, it was a very difficult fight in many aspects. It would be one thing if it was face roll once you got the gear, but even with the crazy resist, she was still incredibly tough, and a lot of guilds actually broke up once they reached her. And after her, you had the Twin Emperors, which was a whole other beast. These guys probably killed us more than any other boss in any raid during vanilla, and that's saying a lot. The way they worked was each one only took either physical or magic damage, and if they were close to each other, they spammed healed like crazy. They would also swap positions during the fight, and they also had an enrage timer. So it was hugely dependent on the tanks, and since warriors were basically the only tanks back then, it was tricky to get aggro on the caster only one. They were designed to have a paladin or druid tank, I think, but most guilds just went with warriors spamming battle shout to get the aggro from buffing. So the casters had to be very careful with their aggro, but it was just such a difficult fight because everybody had to be perfect. One mistake would cause them to get too close or something and heal to full, and every time their health bar went up, you just watched like 3 minutes of work fade away, and you knew that you were hitting that enrage timer. And remember, this is the second to last boss. If you wipe, you spend 20 minutes running back and rebuffing. It wasn't like you could get another shot at it right away when you were fresh. So you started to enter this cycle of getting so pissed off and tired of running back over and over, trying to beat the trash respawns, that you lose your focus and you do something dumb that wipes the entire raid. Repeat this for 2 more months until eventually everybody gets the hang of it, or we just get the gear and finally we take them down. To this day, this boss is my biggest accomplishment in this game, and it was so awesome to finally beat him. There was definitely a giant nerdgasm on the TeamSpeak on that first kill after wiping to them for so many months. But we did eventually kill him, and we moved on to Cthulhu. We never did kill him though, like I mentioned earlier. He was just a bit too tough for us. I think the main reason though was Ahn'Qiraj came out shortly after the time we reached him, and at this point everybody was so sick of this place and we just wanted to see something different. So oftentimes, we just stop at the Emperors or Huhuran, and then just hit up Ahn'Qiraj instead of wiping to Cthulhu all night. The run back for him was the worst yet, and so was the trash between him and the Emperors. It was like we spend an hour to clear that trash, just so we could start wiping on Cthulhu. Another thing with him was that you had to be very specific with how you aggroed him. I still don't fully understand it to this day, but you had to split up into 2 even groups at this doorway, and you let the tank go first. If the groups ran in too quick, he'd do a chain lightning and one-shot the entire raid. So there were times where we'd run back for 30 minutes, buff, go over the strategy, and then die in 2 seconds flat because someone ran up too quick. So it was either that for our night, or something new with Ahn'Qiraj. So I don't really blame us for never beating him. He can keep his damn loot, we don't want it. So, AQ40. Insanely tough, insanely time consuming, fun at times, but also very frustrating at the same time. It did also have some optional bosses. We were just trying to survive in that place, so we didn't really delve into those too much, but we did kill the 3 bugs after the first boss. They were pretty easy compared to the other 2, which was Vicidus and Uro, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. As for AQ20, we did do this a few times. Definitely not as much as ZG, simply because it didn't seem appealing to do a giant bug raid for 3 hours, after doing a giant bug raid for 5 hours. We did find entertainment outside the raid though.
Target locked.
One of the fun things that we used to do after a raid to cap the night off was baking some Ironforge biscuits. In the main town hub for the zone, you could sometimes find Flag hordes sitting within the safety of the guards and whatnot. If you attacked them, you would get insta-killed by the guards, but one of our mages found a clever solution. I've never done it myself, so I don't know the logistics of it, but fire mages have these cooldowns that they could use to get instant pyroblasts, which was their ginormous fireball. We called it the biscuit since it took so long to cook. So our mage, Sir Blackness, would find a flagged horde and put down an Ironforge portal. He'd stand behind it, use a trinket, start baking a biscuit, and then hit him with a double pyroblast and maybe a fire blast and just demolish them. I mean, their computers probably lagged when they got hit, it was so bad. And then he'd make a quick retreat to Ironforge before the guards reached him. So, go ahead and emulate that when Classic comes out if you want. The Ironforge Biscuit. I hope you enjoyed the video, like it if you liked it, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.
Farewell for now, mortals. We hope you enjoyed today's video. See you again soon.